Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Rebekah Tweed. I'm the executive director at All Tech is Human. So, for those who don't know, we're a nonprofit based in New York, and we bring together a global community of over 42,000 people. And together, we're building the world's largest multi stakeholder, multidisciplinary network in responsible tech. We emphasize leveraging the collective intelligence so that we can most effectively tackle thorny tech and society issues in order to co create a tech future that's aligned with the public interest. Our goal is to diversify tech. We want to include more backgrounds, disciplines, perspectives, and lived experiences so that we're best positioned to meet the challenges that we face as a society. And we aim to greatly increase the pace of tech consideration so that we can match the pace of tech innovation. Because we know tech is not slowing down, we need to move at the speed of tech. We're building and strengthening the responsible tech ecosystem through multi stakeholder convenings and community building, through multidisciplinary education and resource development, and through extensive career development efforts. We are trying to establish a very robust, responsible tech talent pipeline. We have a lot of activities for you to get involved in, so you can check out alltechishuman.org for more details about our mentorship program, our working groups, university network, affiliate program, and our talent pool and talent matchmaking service. You can check out our job board. You can join our Slack community of 10,000 members across 100 countries, and you can subscribe to our newsletter. There are a lot of ways to get involved. So if you're tuning in right now, one way you can get involved is to drop a comment. Please tell us where you're tuning in from. We love to find out where our community is at any given moment. So today's discussion, thank you for being here. This is part of our weekly live stream series. So every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern, we gather right here on LinkedIn. This one is very special. We're thrilled to be collaborating with Mozilla for their Rise 25 Awards. It's an annual event that recognizes 25 individuals leading the way in tech. So we are pleased to present the first live stream of a series showcasing some of this year's honorees and discussing their contributions to the advancement of trustworthy AI. So today we're proud to be featuring Cansu Canca and Gemma Galdon Clavell. I want to welcome both of you and share a brief introduction. So Professor Cansu Canca is a philosopher and the founder and director of AI Ethics Lab, a pioneering initiative focusing exclusively on advising practitioners and conducting multidisciplinary research on AI ethics. She also serves as the director of responsible AI at the Institute for Experiential AI and holds a position as research associate professor of philosophy at Northeastern University. Leading a team of computer scientists, philosophers, and legal scholars, Professor Canca provides expert, hands-on, research-driven consulting on integrating ethics into AI innovation and developing responsible AI governance and strategy for organizations. Professor Canca's expertise is sought after by various ethics, advisory, and editorial boards. She advises Fortune 500 companies, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, and Interpol in developing guidelines for law enforcement, investors, and companies for responsible AI innovation. We're also joined today by Gemma Galdon Clavell, a pioneer and global force in AI safety and auditing, ensuring that machine learning tools truly serve society. She's the founder and CEO of Eticas AI, a venture-backed organization that identifies, measures, and corrects algorithmic vulnerabilities, bias, and inefficiencies in predictive and LLM tools. Eticas software, the Eticas platform, is the first solution to automate impact analysis and monitoring, ensuring the AI systems are high-performing and safe, explainable, fair, and trustworthy. Okay, so welcome to both of you, and congratulations on being Mozilla Rise 25 honorees. Cansu as a change agent for cultivating inclusive AI, and Gemma as an entrepreneur fueling AI's evolution with visionary ventures. So I'm really excited to have both of you here for this conversation. And as we jump in, I want to remind everyone tuning in today, we are happy to take questions toward the end. So if you do have a question for today's guest, please just drop a comment in and we will get to those at the end. So we're just going to jump right in. Let's start with you, Cansu. I know you've been working in the field of AI ethics for quite a while, years. I'm curious how you've seen the field evolve over the past couple of years. And can you tell us what your work is most focused on today?
Yeah, thank you for having us. First of all, Rebekah, this is great. It's always great to connect with the All Tech is Human community. So yeah, I think the best way to describe, I think, is like for the earlier days of AI ethics, let's say until 2019, it was like talking to the void all most of the time, because we were aware, like people who are working in the area were aware of all the problems increasing and becoming much more connected to each other. But it almost like every time you talk about it, it just didn't land on any actionable ears. So it always was this conversation like, oh, let's chat about AI ethics. Let's have conversations around it. But when it comes to, I always say this, like ethics is not about, yes, it is great. It's aspirational. We want to make people think that how can you get better lives and how can we build better societies? But in the end of the day, it has to be actionable, which means you have to put resources, you have to dedicate time, you have to create talent, and you have to hire talent to do those things. And for a very long time, this just wasn't there. And I think the first, at least for my work, so I'm a philosopher, and my work looks at AI ethics from the perspective of an applied ethicist who's been working in the ethics area. And coming into AI ethics, the big question initially was that, well, how do we even do this? Are we going to copy existing applied ethics structures, like have an ethics board, have principles, and then somehow magically be ethical? So my work from the very start was focused on what does it really mean to do AI ethics? What kind of a structure do we put in place? What kind of a system do we put in place? Who is supposed to do what in order to have this running? Because as you said, the innovation is fast-paced. It's faster than having, medical ethics conversations with physicians and the patients. And there are too many tweaks that you have to keep an eye on in some sense in order to make sure that you are proceeding ethically. So I think the push for getting this done, we haven't gotten this done yet, but like getting at least to the period of like more action time, started with the combination of the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal, the GDPR. So all of these, like the public perception, public awareness, and the regulatory steps combined, I think, made companies start thinking about, oh, actually, maybe we need to do something. And initially, I think the topic was very focused on privacy and bias, and still is at the moment. But this is another thing that we keep talking about. Responsible AI ethics has so many different facets, and we cannot do these silos of like, this is a privacy team, this is a security team. You have to understand the trade-off. You have to deal with the trade-off. And going forward, we have to, right now, for example, I think a lot of the even though there's a huge human-computer interaction community, and there's a lot of work that's being done on intelligently interacting with machines and having our agency, I think that is, for example, not as prominently featured in responsible AI as bias and privacy conversations. So I'll stop here because, obviously I can go forever.
Thank you. No, that was fantastic. So I'm going to move over to Gemma. I have had the pleasure of getting to know you quite a bit in the past year, and you've had such an interesting career arc. So I wonder if you can tell us briefly about your work at Eticas AI and how you identified algorithmic audits as an important pursuit for you. And can you shed some light on what the problem is you're trying to solve and why? Oh, you're muted, Gemma. Thanks.
Apologies. So it's been a really interesting ride. Like I've been in this space for almost 20 years now. And it's funny because I started working in something that was very, very niche that not a lot of people paid attention to. And then just became this thing that everyone's concerned about. So initially I worked very much in the security space where many of the data applications were more advanced. There was a lot of surveillance tools being developed, and there was issues with the ethics of that and the legality of those tools. And so most of my work initially was with that. And actually, I worked a lot with police departments and security forces to look at that and how to improve those systems. But then basically the things that then were niche now have exploded. and have become like a theme that everyone talks about at the dinner table on Christmas. So it's just really interesting. Basically, my job has been to, keep up with my own field, and trying to seize the opportunities, but mostly trying to be useful. From the very beginning, I saw how the way that we were shaping the tech space missed a lot of voices, and it missed a lot of like a social technical approach to issues. One of the things that I've always told my team and everyone who cares to listen is engineers cannot code for a world that they don't understand. And that understanding of the world is getting more and more necessary and more kind of front of mind when we think about the future of AI. AI has a huge impact on society, but also AI is trained on data from society. If you don't understand the complexity of that society, you will not build good products. And so in that trying to be useful, we found one of the huge issues we're encountering was that oftentimes compliance with some of the ethical obligations was reduced to what I call a compliance facade. So companies would have a team of lawyers that did things and came up with documents that said they were compliant. But when actually we looked at the technical solutions that they were implementing, we saw a mismatch between what they were saying and what those systems were actually doing. We started to see that with privacy, like, privacy notices saying, oh, our cookies are super respectful of everything. And then we would audit the cookies and be like, actually, these cookies installing a lot of things on your computer. So like this disconnect between what you say in your policies and your documents and what happens at the technical side. And so with AI, we wanted to develop methods that made sure that inspection and accountability for those systems was also technical. So it cannot be just a matter of text and documents and impact assessments. It's like, okay, so you've assessed the impact, you've assessed the risk. What did you do about it? And how did that translate into a better service or product being given to society? And so we found that auditing is kind of the piece that changes the incentives of the whole system. So if you know you're going to be audited, you need to change things upstream. And so we intervene at the auditing space because we think that's what can define the things that need to be taken care of way before the audit comes.
Yeah, thank you. So Cansu, in your work in the AI Ethics Lab, very curious, what type of organizations do you commonly advise? And during what stage of the AI product development lifecycle are you typically working with these organizations? And can you tell us, are there some common through lines of ethical challenges that organizations are commonly struggling with or that are currently top of mind for you?
Yeah. So I have two jobs. One is AI Ethics Lab, and the other one is the Northeastern Director of Response by AI at Northeastern. And actually, like the team at Northeastern is modeled after the AI Ethics Lab's structure. So they are kind of identical. So for that reason, AI Ethics Lab is right now more on the research side, and the Northeastern work that we are doing is purely research and consulting, just like AI Ethics Lab's model has been. So I'm going to connect this to what Gemma said. The reason why companies come to us is because they are scared of people like Gemma. Because it's so correct. Like you cannot talk about ethics without the motivation. We can all have this like beautiful world peace mind and say like, oh, everybody be ethical. But the reality is that a lot of the times other goals and motivations in corporations cut in front of that. So there has to be some driving force that tells companies, oh, we got to actually give priority to this. We got to put resources to this. So it comes from regulation, from the public pressure. And another thing that we are working on is to work with the investors to consider AI ethics risks, response by AI risks as business risks. So this motivational ecosystem is, I think, very important to understand how companies are thinking. And with that mindset, unfortunately, they still come at the very last minute. They come when they are ready to deploy the system. And by the time they are there, all we can do is almost like what the audit would do. We go back and look at what has been done. But my work is different from Gemma's work, is that what we are meant to do, what our goal has been, that we want to collaborate with the companies to do it correctly in the first place. So by the time the audit comes in, everything is in place. And that is still extremely difficult because the perception is still such that, first of all, they think that they are doing everything right. So the perception is that, you come and say yes, and so that we have the paperwork in place. And they think exactly as Gemma said, they think that everything is technical. So you don't need to think about the social, you don't need to do the stakeholder engagement, you don't need to think about the core philosophical questions like what definition of fairness should you be employing in order to assess this model or monitor this model for fairness. These are not technical questions. You have to have philosophical and social answers in order to go and proceed with the technical measures. And we try to explain that. And some companies, everything is not bleak. Some companies do start coming at the early stage and they say, look, we are planning on expanding our AI use in this direction. And instead of bringing us a system or an AI system that they're about to deploy or even create, they say, we are going to start developing or we are going to start deploying more and more. What are the governance mechanisms we should have in place? And that's very important because we don't want to come in, work on a model, go out. What we want to do is we want to create a pipeline that is robust so that every time you think about an AI project, you already start asking the questions, what am I doing? Why do I need this AI system? What risks do I introduce? Where does the impact fall? What value am I expecting to get out of this? And let's start thinking about this systematically and delegate the questions to the experts within the company. And if there is none, then outside of the company. So we create this innovation life cycle that embeds ethics by design, meaning your ethical decisions, goal, aims turn into action items. Because again, if it is not acted on, it's just that I'm glad that you are thoughtful, but in the end, the system is not. So, and in addition to that, of course, like to have this life cycle sustainable, what we need to put in place in the companies is the right type of talent and a way of that talent communicating with the teams in a way that's not creating bottlenecks. So not a review board only, not a decision board only, but people who have abilities to who are trained to flag the ethical issues, to know where to look for answers and escalate it when it's a complicated question. And in order to say, to look for where the tools are, where the guidelines are, we also create playbooks. So it's what we call the responsible AI governance is playbook, people, and process. So we put in place these three. And in the end, the goal, you start with an AI system, you start an AI project, and in every step, it already has ethical questions asked and answered and incorporated going forward. So where should they come to me? Very beginning, right now, not without any delay.
Yes, and you mentioned, the governance mechanisms. I do want to turn this to Gemma. I want to unpack something provocative that you said last Friday. We had an all-day AI governance workshop with IBM Research. I recommend everyone check out All Tech is Human's YouTube channel for Gemma's panel. But you said AI governance isn't working right now. And I want you to tell us more about what do you think is not working well and what issues are you seeing in AI governance?
A lot is not working. I think we have a problem with first the ability of AI governance to actually have visibility over technical developments. Like again, governance not being just an organizational or legal exercise, but a technical exercise. All those precautions need to be translated into technical specifications. And right now, AI governance mechanisms are not doing that. They are not requiring that those using AI governance tools are doing that. We also have an issue with the focus of that governance. I think that many of the challenges of AI are not even being addressed head on. I see a lot of effort around foundational models, for instance, and very little effort on AI impacts and looking at who is suffering today from predictive AI tools. So I think that we keep kind of failing to put the emphasis in the right places, and that comes at a cost. Like when we're talking about the potential long-term risks of AI, we do that at the cost of not talking about the the impacts of AI today, the people that are not being hired when they're the best candidate just because something that is going wrong in the AI hiring system. We're talking about people that are not getting the medical help that they need because there may be an outlier or not a pattern in the data that's being used or underrepresented in the training data of the AI system. We are talking about people not accessing university because of the way that an AI system looks at their results and their student history. Like, we're seeing a lot of people who are missing opportunities for the wrong reasons, and that is deeply problematic. And I think that the issue of bias, but just more generally, bad decision making around AI has profound implications for not just for our democracies, but also for the life chances of a lot of people, minorities and non-minorities, who see their chances being impacted by those systems. And what I see is that we've been investing a lot and talking a lot about these governance mechanisms, but they are not translating into better products. We are not managing to change the way in which the AI industry works. And so for us, what's really important is to put the kind of, not the burden, but like the responsibility on the implementers of those systems. So it's, okay, the big, large corporations haven't felt the incentive to invest in this, to make sure that they address this, that they protect these outliers, that they build mechanisms to ensure that those systems have a good impact on society, to take precautions to ensure that younger people are not more vulnerable when using these systems, like all the things that we know are happening around the systems. We haven't managed to get them to act responsibly and to use the precautionary principle when launching those systems. But we have all these companies buying these systems and inheriting the liability of those systems. So if you buy an AI hiring tool, you're the one making the hiring decision, and you're the one who may be leaving out people of color, women on a routine basis. So you're the one who is liable. So we are trying to get all these organizations to audit these systems, even when they have not developed them themselves, because they need to know if they're not making good decisions. They need to have their own mechanisms to know if the software that they bought is actually serving their needs and not creating liability or trust problems in their operations. And they're the ones who then need to go back to the provider and say, listen, unless you can sell me something that you've tested, that you've used the precautionary principle on, I'm not going to buy from you. And so through auditing, we're also developing all these B2B mechanisms so that the buyers of this technology are in a better position to make better choices and buy the solutions that are actually taking care of their problem holistically, not just solving the tiny technical issue, but making sure that you solve the tiny technical issue in ways that lead to better decision making and in ways that do not create liability for your client. So I think that we need to change a little bit how we approach the issue of AI governance. I think that we need to stop focusing on long-term issues in big tech. I think we need to start thinking about the implementers of these technologies, like the Walmarts that hire, like the large organizations, the banks that are making fraud decisions and mortgage decisions and house appraisal decisions based on AI systems. These are the entities, like basically every single small and medium and large business in the whole world, they have an interest in auditing those systems and building and ensuring AI mechanisms that actually look at how these systems work and impact on society. And until AI governance tools do that, I feel we're going to continue to invest in really meaningless exercises. We're going to waste resources in doing things that are not really protecting these companies and are not really protecting users from those technologies. So I think that we have lots of problems ahead of us, but the issue of focus and real accountability of those systems is top of mind for us, and these are the things that we are trying to address with auditing. So we have chosen auditing very strategically. We're not doing this because we saw a gap. We're doing this because we saw that this was the tool that could change the incentives in the whole AI industry and start to make sure that the systems that hit society are systems that are trustworthy and safe to use for all.
Yep. You mentioned incentives, and it definitely feels like that is the centerpiece here of what kind of levers could we pull to shift those incentives. And so, yeah, I'm curious if you have thoughts on basically what it would take to shift that. Is that basically, do you think it comes down to regulatory incentives, or is it public pressure, or some combination? Just curious. I mean, it's a huge question, but curious your thoughts on that, Gemma.
Well, the good thing is that we already have the regulatory pressure. Like, I moved from Europe to the US a couple of years ago because I could see how the US was taking on the responsibility of thinking about the risks of AI, not just the possibilities, and also understanding that the possibilities of AI will only be realized if we address the risks. Like, at the end of the day, the best innovation is the innovation that is able to mitigate its negative externalities, just like cars have seatbelts, and anything that we use has made sure to understand how can this go wrong, and how do we fix that, and how do we mitigate and minimize the instances when this goes wrong. So I think that there's a lot of regulatory pressure to start doing things differently. But as we've seen in Europe, regulation alone does not guarantee change. We've had GDPR with privacy for 8 years now, and we've seen very little change in terms of practices. I think that's beginning to change because the courts in Europe are beginning to be more active. And so we may see some judicial pressure for compliance, but it's basically been 8 years of non-compliance with regulation. So we have regulation, we have public pressure. People are really concerned about this. We are seeing how in really sensitive spaces, like in the medical field, people don't trust AI. If you tell people, do you want AI to come up with your diagnosis? People are like, no, give me a doctor. So people are realizing when it's high stakes, they're like, okay, if my life's at stake, I'm not sure I want this system. So we have the public pressure, we have the regulatory pressure. I think what we need is market pressure. What we need is those companies that are using these systems to start asking questions and be like, I'm not going to buy this system. I'm not going to spend money on this system if you cannot guarantee that I'm not inheriting your liability and that you're not helping me make better decisions. Because again, in the end, choosing the wrong people for hiring or to give them a mortgage or for a medical diagnosis, if those decisions are biased, that's a bad decision. Like if you're leaving people out of your marketing decisions, that's a bad idea. Women are clients too. And the same with any kind of dynamic of discrimination that we see. These systems are failing to do what they say they do. And I think we need more accountability in that respect. And I think that what we need to do is activate the market, and the market needs to require that their providers do better, just like they do with everything else. Again, anyone out there who's engaged in B2B knows what to require from their providers. In AI, our clients tell us, I know what I wanted to buy. I don't know what they sold to me. That needs to stop.
Thanks, Gemma. Yeah. So turning to you, Cansu, you were mentioning that you have two jobs basically, and how they dovetail. Would love to dig into the research side of your work. Can you tell us what you're researching right now? What are you focused on in your work at the Institute for Experiential AI? And just, what's most interesting to you about the research you're doing right now?
So Rebekah, I'm going to manipulate your question a little bit to sort of connect to what Gemma said, because I think this was very interesting and very important. So just to add to everything, I agree with everything. And just to add to that, I think, and connecting to your question. So one thing that we are doing is around education, but executive education. And the reason for that is when we talk about, doing ethics is a very bizarre job in some sense in this setup, because what happens is that at some point you run into some sort of PR problem. So at some point the company is like, oh, we cannot have this, or we cannot say this, or we cannot. When you say things like risks, they start going like, oh, we cannot talk about this. When you say mitigation, they go like, oh, mitigation implies there is risk, we cannot use this word. And instead they have to start understanding what we do here is helping the company. If you don't mitigate, these are doable things, and if you don't do them, down the line you are going to have problems, and massive problems. Not just for obviously our main concern is what kind of a society we are creating, but for businesses to be good for society, businesses need to survive. So I have no intention of bankrupting a business. My goal is to create flourishing businesses that are also creating good products, so that they actually could make the societal progress faster and better and more efficient. But that really requires all the chain of decision makers to understand that this is something that we are working together for everybody's benefit, rather than thinking, like inserting a PR concern in the middle of it and say, oh, maybe let's not talk about this to the client. Let's not mention this risk to the client. That's not the right strategy. So definitely educating the executives, educating corporate directors to ask the right questions so that they demand the audit, they demand products that are properly created. So we work on this part. So just to help with the sustainability of our job, really. We have executive educations, we work with the corporate boards, we advise corporate boards, corporate directors to ask the right questions. This is not exactly research, right? Like this is on the teaching side of things. On the research side, it is more about, again, this idea connecting to what Gemma was saying. The companies are now coming to us, healthcare, law enforcement, investment, gaming, banking, all of them coming with like, what are we going to do with generative AI? And we're like, did you resolve all your problems with predictive AI that you're already using? Are we good with that? Now we're just worried about your ChatGPT? Like, are you sure? So I think this dazzlement about whatever is the new shiny object has to really stop. It might be a good conversation starter. I'm glad that they're picking up the phone and calling us for having conversation. But let's not forget that most of the things that are going on right now about, healthcare allocation, the financial resource allocations, all of these are predictive AI systems. We have major problems with those already. So in what we are trying to do with, so we work a lot with healthcare. I come from ethics and health, so like my team and I are very, very well versed in healthcare space. I work a lot with law enforcement because of my work with Interpol and UN. So we created a toolkit to help develop AI systems responsibly, but also knowing that most PD police departments are not developing their own systems. Going back to the conversation, making them ask these questions in procurement, right? Like we don't necessarily have to answer all of these questions, just get the answers somewhere so that you have this incentive structure build up. So on healthcare and law enforcement, we have very interesting questions that sort of look at both the social impact of these areas and how to think about the specific AI tools in these domains. And then we are working on gaming, which is a totally different space. And gaming introduces fascinating philosophical questions. So my interest in gaming has like two folds. One of them is that it is a very unexplored area in terms of responsible AI and like doing these responsible AI collaborations and putting in place systems and so on. But it's also philosophically the question about the in-game harm versus real life harm. And as we gamify a lot of our life essentially through these interfaces, how do we interact with systems and how should we think about the ethics of designing space and environments that we exist within? It's like in terms of like philosophical research, that's where my fascination is right now.
I get it. Yeah, that sounds incredibly fascinating. Thank you for kind of weaving those together. That was great. I'm going to turn to Gemma now. So forward looking, want to know from your perspective, where do you see things headed in algorithmic audits? Are there things that worry you? Probably some of the things we've already kind of touched on, but are there things that you're excited about? Just really want to know what you're seeing in the coming months for audits.
So like in general, I'm really excited. So like, I love my work. I see improvements and progress every single day. And I love the conversations that we are having and the awareness around all these issues. So it's a great time to work on AI audit. One thing that concerns me, and let me say this, and I think this is the right space to say this, the All Tech is Human audience. One thing that concerns me is that a certain dynamic inside the responsible AI and responsible tech world to compete among ourselves. And I want to say very clearly, we cannot afford to compete. Like responsible AI has to fight to be there. The dynamic of money and technical development goes against responsibility. That's the way that Silicon Valley was conceived, and the way that many of their most visible voices continue to see the way that they should be, that they should be working. And so we need to work together. And there's room for everyone. I see sometimes a tendency for other people working on other things like red teaming or impact assessment, being like, oh, but audits are not necessary. I'm like, I'll never say red teaming is not necessary or impact assessments are not necessary. We need an ecosystem of accountability. And there's different pieces in that ecosystem of accountability. Cars don't only have seatbelts for safety. Cars have lots of things for safety, including brakes and lots of different mechanisms. We need the same with AI. There's room for everyone. We need things that are done, as Cansu was saying at the very beginning, things that are done in the middle of the process, things that are done at the end, things that involve post-market monitoring, which is what we focus on with audits. But there's really room for everyone, and we need more solutions to identify risks, address those risks, and mitigate those risks in the long term. So I think what keeps me up at night, it's a dynamic that I have seen that tends to compete and kind of minimize the work of others. I think that we need to stop that, and we need to make sure that we build a responsible AI space that lifts everyone up. And that is certainly the commitment that you will get from me and anyone at Eticas. We are trying to build a space that helps everyone make sure that we work together towards a world of accountable AI, where technology contributes to building better societies. I think that is really important to say. What I'm excited about is continuing to kind of disrupt every single playbook that we find out there. And I'm very proud that I think that at Eticas, we've been doing this since the very beginning. We were funded in 2012. And I've been trying I have tried to kind of behave and do the things that I'm supposed to do, but that never works. That's never as efficient as I want it to be. And so I keep disrupting things. And so now, as we transition to a startup and we got VC funding, like continuing to disrupt the startup manual. Like, I'm a woman, I'm not a techie, even though I'm highly technical and I've worked with tech for a long, long time, but I'm not your image of the startup tech bro. We optimize for impact, not money. And I'm really grateful that we have investors that understand that the best money comes from actually solving things and fixing things, not just because you build vaporware or promise things that are not really there. So I'm really excited about us being able to show that people that really care about the problems they're trying to solve can build sustainable businesses and can thrive in the AI space, and hopefully inspire others to do the same thing. So again, I am really, really excited for our space, and I know that everyone at All Tech is Human feels the same. And I would just encourage everyone to continue to work in this space, because I feel that it is the duty of our generation to improve the tech ecosystem that we are gonna leave our children with. We are the ones, I often tell younger people, don't trust anyone over 40 with tech issues. I am over 40. We failed to protect society. We're so trustful of these new tools and the internet that I think we minimize the possibility of negative impact. So now we need to do better. We need to fix the mistakes of the past. We need to make sure that our generation fixes that and gives young people today a better chance at succeeding in AI environments.
Can I add
Please
something,
jump in.
Rebekah?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that the one thing that I think stands out for me, in addition to everything that's super interesting, is that this conversation around trust that keeps happening oftentimes. And I want to almost warn people that, when you hear a lot of trust conversation, usually that comes from corporations, and they're like, we go first, we lead by trust. We are trust first. We are trustworthy. And it's like, wait. Don't go for trust. Go for everything as you need to do, so that by the end of it, there is a good reason why we trust you. But leading with trust, to me, sounds like such a suspicious way of framing this. We never had this conversation around cars. We keep referring to cars, right? Trust your car, trust your house. No, trust the ecosystem. Trust everybody doing what they should be doing. Trust the accountability. In the end, you should have trust because you look at the whole responsibility structure and accountability structure, and it works. But this labeling of trust and trustworthy has always made me very squeamish, because to me it seems like it's almost being tried to manipulate it. Don't trust corporations, never trust corporations. I mean, like, the history is full of reasons why you shouldn't be trusting corporations.
I love that point. That's, yeah. Kind of shifting the directionality of the trust has to be earned, and trusting the ecosystem is where to start.
Exactly.
Yes, I love that. In the remaining 5 minutes that we have, I do want to pull up some audience questions. So let's go ahead. Our first question here from Elise Barg. She asks, do you think that there is a gap in accountability for organizations that are deploying AI systems? Should there be rules about how organizations actually use AI tools? And if so, then how do you think that the burden of that responsibility should be split? Who would like to take that one?
I think we will all agree that yes, there are gaps in accountability of AI, the implementers, and I honestly think that the responsibility should be on the implementers. They're the ones that are making the final decision, and they're the ones that should have the responsibility to ensure that their providers are also compliant. I think that they have a key role to play, and they need to feel the pressure. They need to feel that their users, their clients, will not trust them unless they have the mechanisms to ensure that the systems that they incorporate from third parties, from those AI developers, are safe to use. So I think that we need to start putting a lot more pressure on the implementers of those systems. You want AI? That's great. Just put the mechanisms in place to ensure that you can use it safely.
And this sort of trickles back, right? Like, because if you put the accountability on the implementer, well, then the implementer will put the accountability to the provider. So, like, it's not like, oh, here is the ultimate sole responsibility. But what we should be thinking is there are many, many steps. And as we unpeel those steps, we have to say, and this one is your responsibility, and this one is this team's responsibility. We have to assign it as we create these development cycles and procurement cycles and so on.
Great point. Let's see. I think we have time for maybe one more question. Let's see here. From Olivia Heslinga. How do we fight terms and conditions of providers changing privacy terms, features, and compliance facade, sometimes without our knowledge at a regulatory level, if tech companies can hide their mistakes or blame other parties for liabilities?
This is one of my pet peeves, so I'm going to jump in, Gemma. So I come from healthcare, and informed consent is a big thing in healthcare, right? And what has happened with the conversation around terms and conditions and cookies and so on has become this really this very, I think facade is a good term, but it is really just this show of informed consent that resembles nothing like informed consent. So it became this mandatory disclosure, and mandatory disclosures, to be clear, is extremely difficult, even with the best intentions, because what you disclose, how much you disclose, and how much you can have someone go through life reading everything that they need to know is a difficult task. So even in the space of healthcare, for example, we do have struggles of thinking, forget about AI, simple healthcare, when you go and see your doctor, we struggle to understand what should a consent look like. But with AI, with the AI and the digital world, let's say, not just AI, right? The digital world, what happened is that, just put everything on a scrolling screen. No one will ever read, including myself, because if I do, I can't live my life. There are so many scrolling screens, and have them updated, which means all the liability is on the user, and that's absolutely nonsense. What should be happening is that as a user, I should know when I go to this space, generally to the website, news website, or when I go to a space like an actual, a hospital itself, I know, I should have a sense of what is the regulatory structure can be done for me. What kind of data is collected when I enter a website versus when I enter a building, when I enter a school. I should have a sense of that. And then, yes, there might be a couple of questions that I control. Maybe I want to share a little bit for research. Maybe I don't. Maybe I want to share a little bit for product customization. Maybe I don't. But that would be a minimal control. What we do right now is just comical. And I personally don't see any way out of this apart from saying the regulation going in and saying like, this is nonsense, do better. And I always say this as well, like ethics should be done with the innovation mindset. We also cannot just sit down there and say, here's 70 pages. We have to find a innovative, engaging way of bringing this information, allowing this information to be digestible for anyone who wants to know, and for anyone who wants to know more and more and more, because they can go down the rabbit hole if they want to, but they shouldn't have to.
From me, just 2 words: redress and compensation. I think that people that are affected, or that they perceive that they've been engaging in unfair terms of use, they should be able to seek redress and ask for compensation. And I think that if we had more mechanisms to do that, again, we would create the incentives for these companies to do better. But we need to empower users to start speaking up, and also harm the bad players in this industry.
Yep. Thanks to both of you. That brings us to the end of our time together today. So I want to say thank you to Cansu and to Gemma. Thanks for joining me today. And thanks to everyone who tuned in and for providing comments and questions. There were actually quite a few questions we didn't have a chance to get to. Thank you all for tuning in. And you can find me back here next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can keep up with Cansu and Gemma on LinkedIn. Keep up with everything that All Tech is Human is doing at alltechishuman.org. So thanks very much for joining us today.